Hi, hello everyone. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thanks for coming on a beautiful, beautiful Thursday morning to be part of this wonderful talk My name is Dr. Derek Ong from Sunway University Business School, and we are now going live on Facebook for this event called the Sustainable and Social Marketing Guest Lecture Series 4. And today we have the wonderful Mr. Adrian Pereira with us, and he will be talking to us about the topic of building international cooperation and solidarity networks for change. And this is, of course, part of the sustainable and social marketing subject organized by the Bachelor's of Marketing in Sunway University Business School. And before we begin, I would like to just ask everybody to mute your mics and your videos. And if you have any questions, we will be giving you a link for you to drop your questions in if you have any questions for our guests. So without further ado, I would like to just give you a bit of background of who Adrian is. Mr. Adrian Pereira is the Executive Director and co-founder of the North-South Initiative, which is a human rights and social justice organization. Adrian, you might want to show your face while I continue. North-South Initiative is a human rights and social justice organization based in Malaysia, shortly known as NSI. Its mission is to build a society that prioritizes social justice via solidarity building. And at NSI, the social mobilizer team works with marginalized communities from the ASEAN region and beyond to create a competent and resilient movement using critical pedagogy and design thinking. So before setting up NSI, Adrian, of course, has worked with two UN-accredited international organizations, which is Pax Romana International Movement of Catholic Students, or IMCS, and Dignity International. Adrian also has worked with migrant workers, refugees, domestic workers, victims of forced labor, small-scale farmers, indigenous youth, and people living in conflict zones like Patani and West Papua. This includes cleaning up the global supply chain from forced labor and ensuring businesses and governments are held accountable for human rights violation, including gender justice. Adrian believes that Malaysia has become the breeding ground for forced labor in the global supply chain, but has the potential to be a role model for remedies if there is political will and a clear corporate vision from the business sector to right the wrongs. Some of the current tools and methods that has been set up by NSI to engage the business sector includes helpline systems, smartphone applications, remediation, um, social audits, worker empowerment, middle management training, data collection, and even evidence-driven digital system. And I'm sure most recently, some of you would have seen the links that Adrian was also asked to be on Astro Avani in special talks and giving his views about the crackdown and the raids on migrant and undocumented migrants workers in Malaysia. So without further ado, I'll let Mr. Adrian Pereira to take the floor.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Is my sound clear?
Very clear, Adrian. Very clear.
Okay. My name is Adrian Pereira, and it's an honor to be here and share my experience. I think Professor Derek students are extremely lucky to be inspired by his kind self, who's authentic, and you can actually see there are not many students who actually are able to. Not many lecturers today who share that same passion. So it's kind of like a blessing. And before I start, maybe I'll share a bit of my history. I grew up in a small town called Kota Tinggi, and of course there's not much distractions, so it helps you to be focused in life. And in that sense, it was like a plantation area. And that time when you were in school, you learn about that, Malaysia is a leading producer of palm oil and even what you call that, rubber. So what happened was from a very young age, my mom and myself, we would go to different plantations and we would visit the visit families who were not doing so well. And I started to ask myself, why does a country with so much wealth and resource still have people who are struggling in terms of the of their economic situation, and it just didn't feel right. So from a young age, I think I started at about 8 and 7. I started to question my mom, and I asked my mom, why are we uh, why are we just giving them rice, fish, eggs? I said, is this charity really enough to help them break out of poverty? And that time, my mom said, "Hey, Adrian, you better shut up. Just let's give them that fish to eat, because without that fish to eat, you can't. They don't have strength to do the fishing. So this, I'm sure you all remember that famous saying. And unfortunately, and fortunately, as me and my mom journeyed with these different families over the years, some of the families managed to break out of poverty, and some really just couldn't. And that's when I started to question the system. So the saying says that you don't just give somebody fish, you also teach them how to fish. But in today's globalized world, the river where the fish comes from, or the sea where the fish comes from, is either polluted or it's owned by someone from the corporate world. So it's not as straightforward as it is. Yeah. So and after my university days, I managed to join different human rights organizations. And I think my starting point in understanding solidarity started during university itself. And we were exposed to different problems in society. So by training, I'm an engineer, but my exposure was also with the different grassroots communities. So in my university days, we had a lot of visits to the Orang Asli village, to migrant worker communities. And once again, those questions came to my mind. Why is while there's so much wealth in this world, you can still see a big population of people struggling, suffering just to make it through the day. And that also kind of rocked and shaped my principles and values. So even though I'm from a Catholic background, a lot of it is universal values. And I think today, if you fast forward to June 2021, it's really exciting times, not just because of the COVID pandemic, but in the last recent years, I think there's been so much advancement in science, and there are few people who say that if the world or the global system collapses, you have Mars. Mars is ready, so Mars has become planet B. But these things are dreams that may or may not happen. But it's exciting times. We just saw Brexit happen. The Donald Trump coming in and out of power, the climate crisis. I think Me Too was quite inspiring, but still a lot of work to do. And just when we thought that things are already challenging enough, this whole COVID thing takes place. So in some way, it's both a curse and a blessing. Why I say a blessing is because we now know that that what governments are capable and not capable to do, and that of course gives us the resilience to not take things for granted and work on solutions from now itself, from day one itself. And of course, why I say it's a curse is because not many people are able to cope with it. We have seen a lot of grassroots people struggling. So if you look at my PowerPoint, I think Professor Derek already shared the mission and vision of the organization. So basically, in my years of journeying with the grassroots, I realized that people are problem orientated and do not look at the bigger picture whenever we solve problems. So without the element of social justice, we then have very what we can say, very superficial solutions. And as we live in this globalized world, borders become very symbolic. They don't really define who we are. And unfortunately, we happen to be in a country where ethnocentrism is mainstream, and it's in a globalized world. It becomes our duty and challenge to break out of that. And how we plan to do it is by empowering marginalized communities with strategic tools for emancipation. So before I go into some of my points, just share a few photos of why I see building international relationships and solidarity is important. In part of North-South Initiative's work is we are a very organic organization. So people sometimes say, "Hey, Adrian, why are you in different topics, different teams?" And that's the very nature of globalization. Everything is connected to one another, whether we know it consciously or not. The issues are interconnected. I sometimes wish our politicians could see that, but how the politicians work and how the economy works is actually very different, and that's where I think your role as marketing students have a duty to solve some of these problems. So the work that NSI does there's a whole range. Besides the issue of migration and refugee rights, we have been working on the issue of agroecology. So part of my work is helping small farmers look into the issue of organic farming, and we have found experts who are able to recreate small parts of the food supply chain to ensure that it's not just that the farmers produce healthy food, but that we ourselves have the knowledge and awareness of eating healthy food. And I think if you look at the statistics, Malaysians are quite unhealthy, probably for many factors, and among these factors are eating 5 to 6 meals a day, and its high sugar content, low nutritional value. So we have been working with small farmers to solve this. Besides that, I've been involved with youth in conflict areas. So if you look at ASEAN, it looks very beautiful, it looks very peaceful, but there are still certain areas where conflict is taking place. And that's where I think using our expertise, we try to send peace messages. We give the young people tools to not get involved in violence, but to use their skills to solve the crisis in the ASEAN region. I've also helped indigenous young people in campaigns against mega dams. So this whole ASEAN region is also addicted to mega dams. Instead of actually solving root problems, governments and businessmen propose these huge mega dams, which actually do huge damage to the environment and are not really sustainable. Yeah. So that's a bit of my background on the different type of work I've been doing. And I'll just go through some pictures which I think will kickstart our conversation. This is a news article from the edge, and I think these issues came out a few years ago about one of the glove companies in Malaysia, which actually had some problems in its supply chain. And the disclaimer from myself is we were not involved in any of the investigations. We just using this as an example. We have no gains or benefit from this company or whatsoever. But at the moment, because of the global demand for rubber glove, once again, Top Glove comes out in the news, and this was 2018. There were allegations of labor abuse, and you can see the impact on its shares. Yeah, and you fast forward a bit to 2021. Through a series of audit and fixing the supply chain problems, Top Glove then claims that they have resolved the 11 ILO forced labor indicators. And a few days later, you have Top Glove being ousted from this ESG index, which actually helps to categorize companies according to their ethics and their good governance practices. So it's very strange how the world actually works at this moment, how supply chains work, and what North South Initiative does is we try to provide some of the tools to different actors, especially the migrant workers, on how to not get caught in our consumerism and consumer-driven markets, especially in the pandemic time in the PPE sector. Yeah, and you'll also notice that it's not just the glove industry that seems to be coming under the spotlight. Malaysia, being the number 2 exporter of palm oil, also has problems. And here you can see the company Sime Darby being investigated, and actually there's a withhold release order by the Americans. This is another company that is now being investigated. An article by Reuters. Yeah, Goodyear, very famous brand. All of these are very famous brands, and along the way, what North South Initiative has done is we try to take these issues from the grassroots to governments to say, hey, certain things are not working out, and the grassroots are having problems. You need to listen. So we actually tried meeting the different ministers a few times. This is Kula. Unfortunately, his reform agenda didn't really take off. Hopefully, the new minister Saravanan is able to continue. But on the ground, combined with COVID, it's really making life difficult for a lot of workers. Yeah, and if you're sensitive and looking at what's happening in the media, you have these massive campaigns, misinformation campaigns by certain actors that kind of portray migrants and refugees in a very negative light. And the irony of it is Malaysia actually, many of the citizens and the people here have our ancestry or origins from different nationalities, different countries. And unfortunately, we look at migrants in a very negative light. So some of these misinformation campaigns are massive, very well done. I sometimes wish that the friends in the human rights circle had the tools, had the resources to actually counter some of these campaigns and create a safe space in Malaysia for everyone to come and work. Unfortunately, it's not the case now, but with the help of all of you, I've heard some really amazing stories from Professor Derek about what you have been trying to do, about your classes, about what you have learned, and I really believe that power in social marketing can bring this change. If you look at this picture, they are spraying something. I think it's probably Dettol. Really not science-based, science-based or science-driven solutions. So a lot of my work is also with ASEAN. ASEAN may seem like also you can kind of say like a toothless tiger. It's set up for security purposes many years ago, but if you fast forward today, it doesn't seem to be able to cope with some of the problems, some of the crises. I think the only time it like kind of almost solved one of the problems was during the haze. But when they found out that the companies that are burning are within ASEAN itself, then it toned down a bit. But when you look at the Myanmar crisis also, ASEAN has this principle of non-interference where it then makes things difficult to solve and still very government-centric. And what we have to do is bring back the people-to-people solutions or solidarity. ASEAN also is now the lobbying bloc for the free trade agreements with China. So in that sense, it can work together when it wants to. And we have, as citizens in ASEAN, have the duty to then make sure it's justice-based interventions and not just representing the interests of the business community. So why international solidarity and cooperation is important? Okay, I think the blessing in this COVID-19 pandemic, it has forced us to rethink a lot of aspects, especially in how we exist together. There is a vaccination war going on where there's certain actors who are hoarding vaccines instead of giving it to the poorest of poor. And one of my reflections was that when the government opened up the vaccination for Malaysians to register, it was like this. I think people were joking and saying it's like the Hunger Games. You are supposed to ensure that the weakest or the most the people on the margins have that access to the vaccine first. But it looks like those who had the fastest internet or the best computer access managed to register. But it also shows that we have actually failed in our risk management. It has also shown that governments do not always have the best answers. And unfortunately, we have a conservative government. It probably because of the cultural history or the post-colonial history that we are not able to progress in many of the ideas or philosophies of social justice and human rights. And I showed the pictures I showed earlier regarding the rubber glove industry, palm oil, shows that the supply chain is experiencing problems, especially during the pandemic. And what we are afraid of is in their desperation to recover during this economic crisis, the pressure and the burden of overproduction will have its toll on labor and also the environment. So we have to be very careful. And I think we did see some beautiful examples of total strangers helping total strangers without or with minimal questions, So I think the Kita Jaga Kita is a kind of inspiring movement. Hopefully it goes beyond the COVID cooperation and looks at planetary survival. So we don't need to start thinking of how to get on that ticket to Mars and ensure the survival of the species. Yeah. Now, what would be your challenge? I think as people involved in marketing, we'll have to redefine business, and this actually came from one of your lecturers in Sunway, because it cannot be business as usual. Yeah, it came from Bala Murugan, your business lecturer. Um, it cannot be business as usual because we have seen the crisis of capitalism, what it has done to people, what it has done to the environment, and how unprepared it is in managing the risk. And of course, all that profits, where is it actually going to? Does it make sense to help bring it back to people? And this is the question we ask the brands, we ask buyers in the supply chain. You're basically minting a lot of money, partially in the expense and suffering of some people. So it only makes sense in the spirit of solidarity and subsidiary to share that wealth. So that of course will force us to rethink our values, our principles.
Sorry, Adrian, are you okay? You froze up a little bit there. Then might be just give him some time for his connection to come back. My apologies, everybody. This is the follies of working from home when you have to rely on good internet connection. Let me just check up on him. Right. Okay, so my apologies. We're just trying to get Adrian to come back online again. I think his connection just died on him. So by the way, in case any of you have any questions you want to ask Mr. Adrian Pereira, I think he's sharing some really, really, really good stuff for us to note. Please use the link that we have given you so that you can ask your questions. Adrian, please continue. You were getting very, very exciting, and then suddenly you froze.
Sorry, what was my last point? I
think your last slide was the what are the challenges, and you mentioned something about actually I can't remember already.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, okay, sorry. The internet just these are third world problems which we shouldn't be experiencing. Sorry. Yeah, so I think as marketing experts in the brands and the buyers that we work with, I think we have the right to challenge and ask these questions because it really wouldn't look good if one day the people we work with or the brands we work with are exposed for these gross abuses in the supply chain. So it's always important to do our due diligence, and in that sense, you also get to play a role. Not everybody has to, join a human rights organization or go to the streets. You have that power already in within your scope of work. So I was talking about the buzzword of sustainability, which has been used to whitewash. I think we have seen audits that have given companies 4 stars and 5 stars, but in reality, it's actually the opposite that happens. And on their website, you will have all kinds of sustainability terms. So, these things can be used as for whitewashing. So what they do is they use the marketing, the PR to portray a reality that doesn't exist. So also, I think the challenge is to question how do you redistribute wealth for justice. And there are so many reports that showed how much profits are actually hoarded by a few people, how much wealth they own compared. And this is where we need to rethink the charity model. Of course, COVID, people are still struggling to give that fish for people to have the strength. So even if you want to teach them to fish, you still need energy to hold that fishing rod. Yeah. So I think those charity models are good. But it needs to shift. It needs to shift into solidarity models where there's more check and balance. People are held accountable for what they do. That's not happening very much in Malaysia and also in other places in ASEAN, and we need to keep an eye for that. Of course, the planet is also in a bad condition. I'm not sure why the captains of industry don't see this as important. And what has happened is the global supply chain has become so big. It's difficult for the owners or the people who manage the capital to then monitor the tiers down the supply chain, and they use that as an excuse. What should actually be is the chains of delivering services, products should be shorter, and what we can do is highlight the local wisdom and traditional knowledges of the grassroots, and you'll be able to solve many of the problems. But most of the times, even in governance, the grassroots are not at the table from the start. Usually we invite them at the end of a process or when there's a crisis, and by that time it's really too late. And I think there's so many digital tools and marketing tools today. It's important that you redirect them for social justice purposes, and help companies, help individuals with their massive transformative purpose goals. I think this seldom happens. I think because everyone is very focused on getting the sales and the revenue needed as what we are paid for. But times are changing. I think COVID has made us realize that all the money in the world is just not going to save you once you get that virus. So this is my initial reflection, sharing. Solidarity is very important now. We have to come together despite our political ideologies, despite our political affiliations, across the class divide. And I think Professor Derek has already started some initiatives. The ball has already been rolling in Malaysia through social marketing. It's been interesting to see these concepts take place, not just in Sunway, but expanding outside and beyond. I hope that from your question and answers, we can engage more and learn together. Yeah. So thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Adrian. That was so well put. I mean, you literally had to put together 10, 15 minutes worth of presentation and cover 60 to about 100 years of problems and bring it to light. It's not easy. And I know that not just you, but many of my other guest lecturers also were struggling to do that, but you touched on so many different levels, touched on so many different things, which I feel that a lot of people, they may be aware, but they don't know the depth of it. And also in a sense that they know that it's happening out there, but sometimes they struggle. What can I do as a person? So maybe to kick us off with, right, since we have students here, right, what can you advise the students in their capacity? Knowing that they are students, they don't have money, they don't have influence. What can they do in building that solidarity network?
Yeah, so I have a surprise for you. I also don't have money. It's actually that solidarity that helps you to move even in difficult times. So you really need to use different social platforms for either crowdfunding. And I remember I think this one website you call caremongering. How many of you remember that? So
Yeah.
it's really interesting because you have total strangers helping total strangers. And what you as an individual can do is help the communities facing difficulty to map out their plan and solutions. And it's not just packing that rice, that fish, and delivering it to people. That's important, but the long-term solutions. How do you, using all your knowledge, your skills, your tools, and some of these things don't really need a lot of money. It wouldn't be fair to say you don't need money at all. There's always some kind of resource, even things that we take for granted, that the internet, for the grassroots, to go online and register for the vaccine also was challenging. We can't take those things for granted, and money is involved, but the skills that you have, you need to compress it. You need to talk to the grassroots, analyze it, and then propose some solutions together. It could be trial and error. And I remember when I first was monitoring or helping some of the communities in caremongering, refugees, they're not able to expose their real identity because of security threats. And I remember when we first posted some of the refugees' needs for help, Malaysians were like, "Oh my God, this guy is not the real profile. He's using fake profile."
Yeah, I got
get
that
him.
as well. Yeah, I
So
got that as well.
So we had to intervene a bit, and I think the founders were very kind. We negotiated, how do you moderate, gung-ho Malaysians who may not have done their investigations and, immediately delete this thing. So you can actually help Malaysians understand why is a refugee asking for help. Why do they need that money urgently for rental, for hospital bills, and Malaysians may not fully understand why. The refugee in his physical and mental condition, actually they have the capacity to to be independent, to sustain themselves, but there are certain conditions that don't help them achieve that. So it can be problematic. Yeah. So that's one example. I think be creative, reach out, and let the ideas flow. So it's actually you're designing solutions with the grassroots. There's so many experts online in the country, outside the country, who have already created models. You can always test them out. So a lot can actually be done even without money. Yeah.
And I think one of the things why I love teaching social marketing is it challenges your thinking, or your conventional thinking, that things must have money in order for things to work. But as a marketing person, I think the important thing is how creative can you get to appeal to the fundamental level of humanity, in order to get people to do stuff, in order people to get people to care about issues and things that for now it may not affect them, but eventually if you paint the picture clearly, like what you just mentioned about the vaccination program and all that, it will eventually affect them, right, in the long run, correct?
Yeah.
And so one person commented, in my humble view, I think the world needs a new Marshall Project, basically, just restart the whole thing again. One of our viewers would want to know, in terms of the economic system, and I think you already touched on the marketing field. Personally, what do you think would be the things that you are most excited about, number one? And number two, what are you most afraid about that would happen, not just in Malaysia, but maybe in the region in the next couple of years if things don't change?
Yeah, that's exciting question. I think when Professor Derek, when you did your exhibition and your competition with the students. I think they were like really brilliant ideas that the students have come up with. You just need to roll out those ideas, and
Mm.
it's really game changing. You know, it will shift the how markets work, how social justice is done, all very grassroots centric, and you just need the drive. And yeah, if you have those angel donors to help you, roll out those programs, it's really good. Now, what I am afraid of is some of these trends, and you have seen the crashes that happen in digital currency. Everybody wants to make an app, and of course, the funders are also happy. They know that okay, you have exciting ideas, you have people with the energy, and they're willing to throw that money, but uh, they do it because they know that out of 100 projects sponsored, for example, it's a small percentage that will be successful and able to generate that income. My worry is the time and energy that if these projects or programs are not planned properly, uh, it may fall out of the radar, and people may give up. So you really need a lot of solidarity, support, and motivation to get these ideas right from the start. And I've seen a lot of app projects that really waste a lot of time and money. It has minimal impact, but for the sake of collecting data, these things are still propagated. So I think sometimes people need to be authentic in their solutions also, because from the result or from the output, you'll get a sense of how authentic these solutions are. So and I'm also kind of afraid that whether governments have actually learned their lesson from COVID-19. It doesn't look like that. We are
They're still
already
learning, I guess. They're still learning because we're
they,
still in it.
they gotta learn faster. It's almost a year plus into the pandemic, and still we are hearing we are hearing people say, "Hey, why don't you vaccinate Malaysians first?" And then the migrant community, my friends, the virus doesn't operate like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't discriminate based on skin or
Yes.
nationality. And
Yeah.
I'm just afraid that these very conservative ideas are still stuck in the mentality of many Malaysians. So what I appreciate in with uh, with with Sunway and Professor Derek's class is you challenge the boundaries of our conventional thinking, and create progressive thinkers in society. And these are ideas that you will need when you execute your marketing strategies.
And at the same time, put my job in the line also. Um, always.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. So Adrian, if I need a job, if I'll come and find you. Yeah. So well, that's the hazards of working in social marketing, I guess. Somebody asked, somebody said, you talked about there was a lot of misinformation that spreads around in social media and other platform, and it has proven that algorithms have exacerbated the issue to the point of misinformation. Is that is what people would generally see because of all these algorithms at the background. So how can we, if we have the passion to help, how can we help people see the truth and about what is not, and how do we not get caught up in misinformation ourselves?
Yeah, that's the irony of this whole misinformation phenomena, because it's also driven by profit making. So there are actors who deliberately want to spread or viralize misinformation in order to profit here or to achieve a certain agenda. So from a human rights perspective, we are trying to balance the freedom of expression
mm,
with the information that puts people or communities in a very indignified or abusive condition. And we have seen this happen in the past. If you remember that incident in Rwanda, there's a
mm.
famous movie about Hotel Rwanda, and
Yeah, yeah.
how the media, misinformation caused the loss of thousands of lives.
Yes.
So what we are trying to do is, we're not pushing for sanctions or restrictions. That would also be detrimental to social justice and even marketing. Saying what you can do. Instead, help people understand
Mm,
more about what is the truth. How do you find the truth? How do you investigate? There's a lot of fact-checking websites also coming up. We need to be smart.
mm,
Um, we can't take for granted that everyone has access to internet.
mm.
Malaysia still, the internet cost is quite high,
Yep.
and many rural communities still don't have that. But some of the advantages that we have is, we have other alternatives to search for information. I think we are not in a war zone. There's no volcano exploding or earthquake, so our infrastructure is kind of stable, but we should use that to our advantage for the broader pictures here.
Um, Good one, because I feel that misinformation is only consumed by idiots, right? And if you are not thinking, then you will be consumed by what you consume about misinformation. Am I right, Adrian?
You are partially right. Now, you see, and why I say that partially, because the campaigns on misinformation is very well designed, Professor. It's really well
Yeah,
designed.
I
It's
understand.
people I mean, your government wants you to think in a particular way. The fact that Parliament has not convened, for me, it's very worrying, and
Mm,
they use COVID as an excuse. But the whole world has already started to resume certain aspects of life, and an important part of governance, which is Parliament, shouldn't be closed, should be operating. So the way misinformation campaigns are done, it's very political.
mm,
There's also a business agenda. So it's unfortunately, the burden to find the truth falls on us.
yeah.
And if we don't have that worldview or consciousness to search for the truth, then whatever comes we accept.
Mm,
And there are some communities who are now being, or some groups of people who are being labeled as anti-vaxxers, but
mm,
actually they are not. Of course, there are some who are really very clear,
mhm,
don't want the vaccine for their own, for X, Y, and Z reasons.
mhm,
Some of it is misinformation, but there's also another group of practitioners who are saying, hey, do we actually have enough information to make those decisions
mm,
to help us decide, which, it's whether which vaccine, or
mm.
when to get it and things like that.
True.
So I won't comment too much on the vaccine, because there are other experts who do that.
Mm, mm.
But there is a consequence when people are not keen to seek the truth. Yeah.
Mm, that's true. Um, we have to do our part. Lah. We have to acknowledge that we are thinking people, and as thinking people, we need to find within us the pressure to validate whatever sources that we have, or whatever information that we are being fed with. Adrian, I know that time is moving along, but I have a few questions of my own that I want to ask you, and
Yeah, feel free.
I might be putting you on the spot here, but don't worry, um, because I'm very interested to know about your views on the redistribution of wealth. because just now, okay, let me go back first. Just now you mentioned that when you have a passion project, you need to build solidarity, and then you need to ensure that this solidarity would be from within your network, and that also means about uh, trying to find like-minded people in your area so that they in some way support you, whether it's monetary, whether it's on social media, or in any ways to support you. Now, going back to the idea of wealth distribution, and this might be a controversial question, some people have said that real solidarity terms might only work in a socialist environment. Okay, wait first. So, how do we really understand or expand this idea of redistribution of wealth within a capitalist system?
Yeah. So I mean, we have gone past the Cold War era, and sometimes the labels we use may not portray the reality, uh,
Mm,
especially when we have ideological and philosophical debates. And I'll show you how the super capitalists have actually practiced socialism in some aspects. So if you look at the funds that sponsor startups, you know, the businesses have put in billions of dollars, ready funds to sponsor any project, and they know that 90% of these projects are going to flop. So it's not something impossible that uh, that can't be done. For me, my advice is not to get too caught up with these labels, and you know if you really have the authenticity and and also the internal integrity in managing wealth, we will know that these are the communities that should get the share. It's actually coming up with the best formula, and just agreeing to it. So in the world of work, we have something called the collective agreement,
mm,
where workers and the companies or the brands or owners sit and negotiate better salaries, better social protections.
mm,
So that same principle and concept can apply in different aspects. It doesn't have to be necessarily a communist or socialist thing. I
mm,
think these are things that may prohibit or limit our imagination to solve or redistribute wealth. And of course, there are some countries which already implement this. So, for example, if there's certain resource, or for example land, I mean, there's so many abandoned buildings, there's so many abandoned pieces of land, and with some good marketing and strategizing tools, you can convert this into income generating organic farming, for example. So but it's just lying there. The building is abandoned, the land
mm,
is there, nobody is using.
mm,
So the possibilities are endless. Yeah.
mm, mm. I see. So, so basically, what you're trying to say is that move out from your shell and start imagining a world that works for everybody.
Oh yes, COVID will force you to imagine.
Yeah, and that's true, and that's true. And we are reimagining a lot of things. I mean, look at this. If it wasn't for COVID, I would have got you into my class already, and we would have talked to my students face to face. But because of COVID, um, we as lecturers ourselves, we also have to find many different ways of bringing ideas like these, I would say, forward-thinking ideas to not just my students, but also to other people in the world as well. And we just have to think outside the box and figure out how to do it the best way that we can, right? So, Adrian, thank you so much. I think time is already finished. Can I ask you if there's any last minute or last statements or comments you want to make with regards to either what's going on today, how students can help out, or any shout out that you want to make while I
Yeah.
put your details on the chat.
Yeah. So in your passion project, have massive transformative purpose goal, and have that ecosystem to support your dream. You can't do it alone. It's always done together. And be brave to take on some of the problems that we see today. There's no guarantee that you may make your profit, but if you have the right formula and if you do it with the community, I think it can work out. Yeah. So all the best, and North South Initiative is always there to help guide, to share our experience. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Adrian, and thank you so much for all our participants here. I hope you really enjoyed that. And that wraps up our whole semester of guest lectures. I'm sure that all of you who would have joined all our guest lectures for this semester, please give a virtual clap to Mr. Adrian, please. Yeah, everybody, that'd be nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that during this whole semester on the 4 guest lectures that we had, you would have got some really good ideas and some thought-provoking concepts and really challenge the frame of mind and the thinking. For Sunway and for the business school in Sunway, we want to move the nation to the next level of thinking, and we want to continue to build these spaces of debates and these spaces of discussion. We're praying and hoping that next year we can bring more speakers and maybe bring back our favorite speakers and expand on the discussion even more than what we have touched on in the surface. And thank you again, Adrian. Thank you for all the work that you do with the migrant community. If you want to find out about more what Adrian does, please get in touch with him. I think I got the right email address, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
please get in touch with him. Please get in touch with Adrian. He will be more than happy to talk to you. And if, of course, for my student, make known that you are my student so that he will talk to you. And please all take care, stay safe. And if you see any migrant worker anywhere, it could be your Indonesian mate, it could be the Nepali worker, it could be the Myanmar security guards. Just say hi to them and just ask them what do they need today. Okay? So take care all and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.